Good evening. Welcome to the November 22nd, 2016 meeting of the Sherborn Board of Selectmen. We'll ask if our Town Administrator, David Williams, could please read through the agenda, and we can amend as necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll add topics not reasonably anticipated by the Chair 48 hours in advance, and I'm not aware of any of those items. Then a public comment and announcements period. There's nobody signed up for public comment. Consideration of complete streets policy with Ed Wagner, CM&D Director. Gino Carlucci, Town Planner, was also involved in that and will not be attending. Consideration of changes due to the new public records law effective January 1, 2017. Then consideration of attending a 6-town Board of Selectmen meeting on December 8th. Consideration of disposition of town property via consignment auction, and that's for 2-person wooden benches. And then I'll look at other upcoming topics, and then reports and updates from the Selectmen, look at the meeting calendar, and then consideration of minutes.
Could I, somewhere in here, pose a question to the town administrator about the status of the North Main Street sidewalk?
Yes. And unfortunately, our planner's not here tonight, but I think it's
He's right there.
a good question.
Yeah.
Oh, he
Here he
is here.
sits.
I'm sorry.
Excellent. Our planner is here. We were just told you weren't here. That's
I
good.
just
So
said
we
you
put it
weren't
right before
attending.
the
So
complete
maybe
streets
we
thing?
should take that after Complete Streets, so these guys don't have to stick around,
Sure.
if that's all right. All right.
Yeah, they should be involved.
Yeah, yeah, so that's great, Paul. So we'll just move, that'll be a Selectmen item, but we can move it up as you requested. So then let's have a motion to adopt the agenda, if we could.
I got one more thing to add, sorry.
Oh, okay, good.
Since we got to add Ed here, perhaps he can give us a brief update on Goodling and Woodland Street.
Okay, that's fine, too. We can ask for that as part of the Selectmen reports also. And we'll do that right after the Complete Street. So motion to approve the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Great, good. Okay, so thanks, Ed Wagner and Gino Carlucci are here to, I guess, discuss, present on, or explain to us the Complete Streets initiative.
Good evening. We're here tonight to present Complete Streets. Complete Streets is a program offered by the state, which consists of a couple different parts. The first part is for the town to adopt a complete street policy, which you guys have in your packets there. Once the policy is adopted, we're eligible for a up to $50,000 grant for a complete street plan. This plan will identify roads in town, our initial projects, and future projects. Once that is approved, we are then eligible for a $400,000 grant for construction of one of our projects. What Complete Streets is, hold an echo. What Complete Streets is a approach to community transportation utilizing design principles to ensure safety, comfort, accessibility of all users, ages, and abilities throughout town. So what they do is anytime that we're going to reconstruct a roadway, construct a roadway, is we're going to incorporate the Complete Street design principles into that design. And that would be taken into account possible bike paths, bike lanes, crosswalks, safety signals, sidewalks, and it's a very interesting program, and I think we've got a great opportunity here to get a couple projects done. First and foremost that I have in mind for a project is the reconstruction of the intersection of Elliott and North Main. Currently, the signal system there, in my opinion, is a time bomb. We've been looking at this for quite some time, however, we've not been able to obtain the funding for it. In addition to the signal there, it's the pedestrian crossing, the fact that the crosswalks and ramps are not ADA compliant, and we also have a missing sidewalk on the north side of the intersection. So this Complete Street program would take that entire intersection into account, making it more accessible, safe, and updating all the signals.
And as you brought up the east side sidewalk on North Main Street, that would also be an eligible project.
Oh, great.
So that's kind of working that into this as well.
What
And there's more
stage do those
said on
have to be at, Gino, as a project? I mean, we would have to come to the state with a design, or is part of the funding to pay for the design also?
I believe design is an eligible cost as well, but not to do the two projects together, but the sidewalk, we do have, we are moving forward with a design, engineering design on that separately from this program. So we
Okay.
would have that when it comes time to apply for the funding for construction.
We also have a $100,000 earmark that's appropriated by the state legislature for an east side sidewalk that's been sitting there for a few years. The last time I had checked on getting those funds, I was told we need to get the right-of-way acquired before they would consider releasing the funds, which was the reason why I wanted to bring up the issue of the east side sidewalk.
And so
Told to hold that till later, so I,
What we're trying to do is tie the whole thing into the initial Complete Street project. That's why we met with the engineer last week, and we explained to him that the initial funds that we had for that design in front of the Peace Abbey, but we wanted him to design that in mind with carrying it throughout the whole downtown and tying it into the Complete Street program project that we'd be doing at the intersection. This engineer that we've selected works extensively with Complete Streets. He's done it for several other cities and towns, so he's pretty confident he'll be producing a very good plan for us.
you know, the vision that this board had and the planning board had was to have a sidewalk going all the way from the intersection down to Village Way. And with the new development that's going in Abbey Road and with the stores that are there, this was a chance to reduce the use of vehicles for short trips, encourage people to walk, which is healthier for people. It matches the sidewalk on the other side of the street. Right now, we have a crosswalk, for example, that goes across from C&L Frosty's to essentially
nothing.
Nothing.
Parking lot.
a parking lot. Yeah, there's no sidewalk there. So if somebody wanted to go to the tennis courts, they got to be walking on the grass or cutting through different property. So we want to see that sidewalk built. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this thing up was that the right-of-way is not fully acquired. That is, as part of the permitting for the Abbey Road project, they agreed to give us the right-of-way in front of their property so that the sidewalk could be located there. But there's a large wall that intrudes into that right-of-way. And as I drive by it every day, I noticed that landscaping was going on top of the wall, where I understood that that wall was going to be moved out of the right-of-way so that there would be a clear shot. We already pretty much have flat open space from the intersection all the way down to this wall. But there's just this corner of the wall that sticks into what is now our right-of-way. It became our right-of-way as part of the permitting the property owner agreed that that right-of-way would be ours for the sidewalk. So we have paper title, but we don't have physical access. So I wanted to find out, when is that piece going to open up so that we can actually build a sidewalk?
And that's one of the main goals of the engineering design, which will identify exactly how far and where that wall needs to be moved in order to accommodate the sidewalk. And as you say, the developer of that project is committed to moving the wall once he knows exactly how much and where it needs to be moved to. So this engineering design, which will be done in a couple of months, and then we can move forward on moving that wall.
David, what was the agreement? We had a written agreement in the deed in terms of obligation to move the wall, right?
Yeah, it was to move the wall for construction of a sidewalk. So the property owner defines his obligation as not moving it until we're going to plan for constructing a sidewalk. So he wants an engineered design given to him so that he can move the wall, because he has a fear that if he just does it on his own and then we do a sidewalk and he has to move the wall again. I also did contact him when Mr. Durensis contacted me about them filling in behind the wall, and he assured me that it was that was going to be okay. That wasn't stopping his commitment to moving the wall and the commitment to the sidewalk, because it helps his development as well.
But not just his development, we also have Woodhaven there, and we have Leland Farms there. So
Yeah.
there's a number of residents in that area.
No, but I'm saying he has admitted that he has a vested interest and supports doing the sidewalk. So he has committed to moving that wall.
Yeah, my recollection was he would move it when we told him where to move it.
Yeah.
That project's getting close to finished, and so once you move equipment off the site and you're done, it's just harder to get somebody to come back and move things. So hopefully this will be ready pretty soon, Gino?
Yes, but on that point, I did discuss that with him, and he said that's not an issue. If he has to bring equipment back to do the job, that's not an issue for him.
Is he retaining an ownership interest in that project even after the units are sold off?
No, it'll be a condominium ownership.
Yeah, that's our concern.
So that's really the issue,
Exactly.
is to tie that up before they change.
Well, he's a long way off of handing that over.
Yeah, okay.
And keep in mind, the part that got landscaped, one, he has to do that. He can't just leave, he needs erosion control. He had to
Yeah,
do
of
some
course.
landscaping. The highest part of the wall is probably not gonna be moved anyway. Remember, it's the rubble wall down below that's the worst and closest. And that's near the woods. But he's been, even if he was ready to do it, I don't know if anyone saw the massive amount of work that got done once Eversource finally showed up. But they were a couple months behind, I think thanks to the Verizon strike. But the lower portion of that wall is abuts where the trenches were that go to the poles. They had to add poles in there. No one could have done anything until Verizon set new poles, and there was a lot of utility work out there.
Is that going to get adjusted with a sidewalk, Sean, or is that utility work?
A lot of it was underground, and the poles are where they are. They'd cost a fortune. There's no way they're moving. But I mean, he just got power on last week,
So we would need a 4-foot clearance past those poles then on the sidewalk?
possibly. And we have a hydrant that's also might be in the way. Fortunately, it's one we got to fix.
Because if we're going to have to meet ADA compliance to get
Of course.
streets funding, so we'd
Yeah.
have to.
But
36 inches
again, I
at
think the highest part of the wall, it seems, has all that anyway. It's where the wall goes to just some rubble farmer's wall that
Yeah.
wouldn't take much of a machine to move anyway.
There is an angle of that wall, the high wall,
Yeah, the end of it, yeah,
The end of
is
the
in
wall.
the
Yeah.
right-of-way.
agreed. That's about where it gets really tight, but certainly not the whole length of the wall, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, it might.
Maybe
but-
15 or 20 feet at the end, but certainly
Yeah.
not the whole thing. Most of it's okay.
Okay.
And the agreement we signed with the engineering company, it was Green International, they were going to do the drawing past the railroad tracks, right?
Up to the railroad tracks, yes.
From which
That was-
direction?
From Village Way to the railroad
Okay.
tracks.
And you've got something from the railroad tracks on up? previously, or that was just a sketch
Well,
plan?
it's all wide open,
Kind of sketch plan, okay.
yeah.
Looks like it's already set up for one.
The hard-
Has anyone
hard
heard
part is
from the
getting
railroad
to
company? Have you? Has anyone? They're supposed to be doing that crossing at some point.
One of our-
Best I got was, you'll probably find out when we start, like they did to Medfield.
But you know the railroad doesn't own it anymore. It's owned by the
No, I know.
MBTA.
I know, but the ownership company and the contractors, I mean, they laid rail out over a year ago, and it's just all sitting next to it. We can't even access the side road to the fire, for the fire.
So is the MBTA in control of this project, Paul?
It's in control of everything.
So David, can you get in touch with the MBTA and tell them we want to know when that project in Sherborn's going to take place? We want some advance notice so that we could plan for the
But we
disruption.
need an extension on the crossing for the side, like you couldn't put a sidewalk across that. There's no,
Right, and that's.
People be
so that's-
tripping over the
that's
rails
second
when they
issue.
get there.
There's logistics, and then there's this
right.
design issue.
So we want that we want that incorporated into the design when they do the crossing. It needs to be, I don't know, 6 feet longer than it already is.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a lot of money behind them. The idea has been floated to run trains from Framingham to Gillette Stadium on game days and things like that. And they're going to be going through the town at a pretty good clip. So I'm not sure that we as a community want to see that rail line get too fancy, too fast.
So can we get a timeline on, because as I sit here and listen to it, this thing gets more complex all the time. So could we get a timeline of when we want to have things happen so that, you know, this all takes place before the condominiums all get sold, and we can then go back to MBTA and say, this is the date by which we need this done?
Well, Michael had a great idea before, if I could.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me what my great idea was. I need to know.
Your idea was, we don't have to build the whole thing right now. We can build the sidewalk
To the
in front
tracks.
of the Abbey Road development, get that piece done and sort of locked away while we deal with
The
the
rest of it.
MBTA or other issues.
But if we're in the middle of building a sidewalk, we might as well finish the whole
Well, if
project.
we're gonna have a plan for the-
And, you know, I think people expect us to do it that way. So all I'm saying is, what to lay it out on paper, what are the major steps, and make sure everybody that needs to be part of this knows it.
I think that's what, were you going to say something about continuing the sidewalk to the other side?
Yes. Number one, this is the second engineer that we had look at it. The first guy, the price was a little high. Green International did a very good job coming in under the 10,000. But that was also for him to keep in mind that we wanted to continue that whole sidewalk. One of the goals that we were trying to do was get the sidewalk down to the tracks before they start rehabbing that entire intersection. That way they would incorporate it into their design also. But we do want to get this moving, and the engineer is looking at a couple of weeks to get his design out to us. We just got the paperwork over to him. I'm sure he'll be pretty fast in getting back to us. We are into November, so construction season's basically over anyway. But we're hoping to get on this thing right in the springtime.
That kind of brings us back to the Complete Street Program. So if I can tie it together, the Complete Street Program will give us money to build a sidewalk. Is that a
That's the
sort
hope.
of simple, oversimplified way of saying how this all fits together?
So by the board signing the policy tonight, I will be, this is the first step in the program. It's an all online program, so what I'll be doing is scanning this, sending it over to them. They have to go through and grade it. Gino and I have already been through it, and David, and we feel our score on this policy is above the 80 points that they're looking for. Immediately after they're approving this, they release the money for the engineering study to come in and develop the complete street plan. What are our prioritizations? What are our project listings? So number one project would be the intersection, and then carrying this thing throughout the downtown. But we can definitely prioritize that sidewalk, start on one end if you like. But we are trying to tie this all together.
I have a question. What's a sharrow, which is described in here, and I don't know what the word means?
A sharrow is a depiction of a bicycle with a couple chevrons. What they're trying to do for cities and towns, more of the Metro West than like Boston, Cambridge, where they have the dedicated bike lanes, is for the bicyclists to be aware of the motorists and the motorists to be aware of the bicyclists. And it's a big education program in trying to get the motorists to be aware of the bike laws, the bicycles to be able to share the roadway with the motorists. John here has, if you want to chime in at any time, as a bicyclist, we've looked at the Sharrows, whether we want to do a dedicated route through Sherborn for a starting program, possibly incorporating them onto North Main, South Main, the areas where we do have the wider roadways. Possibly, if we were able to squeak in maybe a bike lane along South Main, we don't know. Part of the Complete Streets design is they've actually shrunk the vehicle travel lane down to about 10.5 feet. And by doing the shrinking there, sometimes you can squeak in a dedicated bicycle
Not a
lane.
challenge for us. We have 2-lane roads that are 10.5 feet wide, so we're fine.
When I attended the training seminar, I ended up about half hour in raising my hand, and he asked me to identify myself. I said, Ed Wagner from Sherborn. He went, oh. He said, I'll talk to you at break.
Is this what Wellesley has, the Sharrows? Is that where they have the stencil of the bicycle? and
Stencil of the
road?
bicycle with a couple of the chevrons
On the roadway itself,
on the roadway itself.
to alert the motorists as you're driving that bicyclists are also
Bicyclists
using
are
the
also there.
Same road,
Yep.
okay. Great. Thank you. That was good. Is this something you guys have developed based on what other towns have had approved? Is that what it is? Good.
Yes.
I think it's very good. I just was
Yeah,
curious.
what I did was I took somebody else's work, modified it to Sherborn, and in going through, I tried to make it, by meeting the 80-point grade, and at the same time, they're looking for the biggest commitment they can from the town, but at the same time, given our roadways, our walls, the widths of our, the back roads, it's very difficult. So in here, it does state throughout the policy that we are going to do this and incorporate complete streets to the best of our ability for what makes sense. So if we end up with a roadway that is narrow, we have a historic stone wall, and you can't incorporate any of this, it's just not feasible.
Yeah, I love this part of the policy and commend you for it. I just want to read it to our listeners. Complete street principles include the development and implementation of project in a context-sensitive manner in which project implementation is sensitive to the community's physical, economic, and social setting. The context-sensitive approach to process and design includes a range of goals by giving significant consideration to stakeholders and community values on a level playing with project need. It includes goals related to
Livability.
livability with greater participation of those affected in order to gain project consensus. The overall goal of this approach is to preserve and enhance scenic, aesthetic, historical, and environmental resources while improving or maintaining safety, mobility, and infrastructure conditions. I'm reading all of this aloud because some years ago there was a lot of controversy in the town about changes to North Main Street. And this project and this proposal and what you're talking about for the intersection doesn't disregard all of those values that the community expressed back those years ago about these streets. Safety, mobility, infrastructure conditions, but also scenic, aesthetic, historical, and environmental resources.
So what, you said you want this formally adopted tonight? Is that the idea?
Please.
Okay.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
So we just did 16, right? We just repaved it. If this had been in effect, would there have been anything different about that project?
Probably not, because we don't have any sidewalks, crosswalks of that such. About the only thing I probably would have really looked at would be the roadway width and possibly squeaking the lines in if we could have gotten a bike lane. It definitely would have included some sharrows, probably. The other part of this policy is they were looking for a complete street committee to be set up, where, Sherborn doesn't have that many committees. I thought that it would make more sense to have the planning board and myself consist of that committee. That way you've got kind of CM&Ds in charge of the roadways, the planning board for the scenic and bylaw and trees and such, and that way everybody's viewpoint would be looked at. In the event that, and if you read through the policy, in the event that there's a disagreement between myself and the planning board, the Board of Selectmen would be the deciding factor in the project and what gets implemented.
Okay.
So I tried to keep it clean and simple.
Anybody else? Okay, so do we have a motion to approve this policy?
Paul looks like he wants to make the motion.
Go ahead if
I
you...
was just going to say so moved.
Okay, great.
Well,
You had something more elaborate, go ahead.
I'll second it. There's just a couple of typos in
Yeah,
this
there wa-
thing.
Yeah.
Like in the second paragraph, you have providing safe travel twice. So perhaps we can provide safe travel once.
Is that yours?
Yeah, there's probably a few, you know what we could do? We can compile the typos and give them to David to clean up, and we can come in and sign it when it gets
Let's
typed
do
up in the
that.
final
I found a
form.
couple, but I was reading it on my phone or the computer, so I didn't
Okay.
fix them.
All right, great. Anybody else have anything? So we take a vote? All in favor of adopting this? Boy, thanks for doing this. A lot
Good
of
job, Ed.
work. This is one of those things that's really going to pay dividends for the town over time, and thanks for bringing it to us. Thanks. And now, Ed,
Did we have one more thing?
the follow-up question was the Goulding Woodland question that Sean had.
Yeah, I noticed the pole was half cut, meaning Eversource is done.
Eversource has completed their transfer. It was all taken care of on one day. I believe it was the 18th they came in to do that. From there on, it goes to Comcast. This morning, I had a conversation with the gentleman in charge of the construction over at Comcast. He assured me that he would be out here either this afternoon or on Friday to take a look at it and expedite it the best that he could. He didn't even have it on his list yet, so I notified him that Eversource had put it on. They had to keep a master database when they do transfers so that everyone's aware of who's doing what work. He didn't even have it on his, he wasn't aware of it, but he is now. Hopefully he'll be getting out here to take care of that. After that, it's back to Verizon,
Okay.
where it all started.
So slow progress, but a little progress anyway.
In any case, this will be done by construction season.
Good.
On another note, I had our contractor out to look at the intersection, looks at to remove the tree stump, take care of the curbing issues, and working in conjunction with my guys and a few of my materials. We're looking at about $10,000 to take care of that intersection. So I should be able to eat that out of my budget.
There's a very, very large hole behind the guardrail, which, is going to go up to somebody's hip probably. I avoided stepping in it a couple of weeks ago, but somebody should get up there and fill that with dirt before we've got a problem, unless you've already done that. It must be where one of the poles was removed.
I noticed it yesterday.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
They didn't remove a pole, did they?
No, it was a tree trunk root system that sort of disintegrated.
It's a big
So
hole.
one of those trees that we took.
That's a serious...
You were walking behind that guardrail the other day?
I was walking behind the guardrail because it got dark while I was out, and that's a safer place to walk than in the street around that corner.
As long as you don't roll down that
As long
hill.
as you don't go, well, as long as you don't go in that hole. No, there was plenty of room not to roll down the hill as long as you didn't
Yeah,
step
the
in the
hole.
hole.
I will grab that.
Yeah, you know where
Now
right
I
is.
know why you wanted those trees gone.
That's exactly right. Okay, so we voted for this. We've got our update on Woodland Goulding. Thank you, guys. Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Gino, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.
All right. Consideration of changes to the new public records law effective 1/1/17. We've just figured out the old public records law, Diane, and now we've got the new one. So who's going to walk us through this?
I'll start with it.
Okay.
As part of the Municipal Modernization Act, there were a lot of changes. One of the changes had multiple things affect the public records law and the open meeting law. Primarily, right now, while we're still going through a lot of the items that our town council has brought to our attention, which were included in the packet, the first thing we wanted to do is try to straighten out who would be the records access officer. So it's referred to as an RAO in the law. The records access officer in every community by default will be the town clerk. Here, we've had some discussions internally about what might make sense, and we had come up with having a records officer, having the assistant town administrator act as the records officer for non-elected bodies. So it'd be for appointed bodies, and the clerk would continue to be the records officer for all elected bodies.
So including the
and
Board of
offices.
Selectmen? The clerk would be the Board of Selectmen's records officer?
Sounds the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have to carve that out.
Just a little bit of background here. I read the stuff from Koppelman KP Law, and they weren't sure what the wording meant, but I was there when the wording was put together, and originally the idea was the town clerk would do this, but then we heard from some law enforcement people that they have a very busy time handing out accident reports, and they wanted to keep the responsibility for doing their own records. And in drafting this thing, we wanted to allow the police departments across the Commonwealth to continue to do things like that. They do it well. They don't really need a records officer to be on top of it for them. So this was set up so that the word "or" was used, town clerk or someone designated by the Board of Selectmen. And it can be more than one person. I certainly support the idea of Diane Morris doing this. I would coordinate with the police department to see if they want to be their own records officer for their stuff. I mean, police departments generally across the state have done a pretty good job, and there's a lot of paperwork. I think someone said in one of these meetings that most of the records that municipalities produce are really these reports out of the police department. So if they had their own records officer, it would really make things a lot simpler across the board for Diane,
So,
in particular, if she's going to be doing this.
so here are the issues we've run into in the past year with records requests. I don't imagine they would change too much. You know, one is confidentiality of certain records and a lot of consultation with town council as to what should and shouldn't be released. We've also had some elected bodies that have had a large number of requests, and those requests have been filled through that body's staff, but also through our office. You know, on the one hand, it's a burden on the office to have those requests come in through town administrator, assistant town administrator. You know, on the other hand, you have more control over the request and the response, and you can make sure that if there are personnel privacy is really the biggest issue, David, that I think you've been running interference on. And if there are personnel issues, you're in a position to control that and to request town council. If the town clerk is the records officer for agencies that have requests that involve personnel questions, we're going to have to create a town council budget for the town clerk. And we're also going to have some sharing of responsibilities in terms of the personnel issues that might be raised by requests. So I think we've got to think more about how these responsibilities would be divided up. You know, we probably also ought to ask the police department or the police chief formally for some input and the town clerk formally for some input in terms of how this would work. But I am really concerned that if particularly with personnel type records, whether it's for a staff of an elected board or an appointed board or our office, that we want to have one point of control for that, and we want to be able to call on town labor council and town municipal council as appropriate for those. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
I think I agree with everything.
Makes
you just
sense
said.
to me.
So you're saying we could, if we could set it up somehow that it came through our office as a triage and we siphon off those ones, and then the routine public records ones we could assign to the department?
Yeah, I mean, if the town clerk is asked for meeting minutes and things like that, that makes perfect sense. If there's a question about you know, we've been asked about a lot of stuff this year, including, you know, private records potentially, and work records, and correspondence, and all kinds of other things that have some privilege associated with them potentially. That stuff, I think, should run through a single point and somebody who's got the ear of, or access to town council. Have you run into any of that, Paul, in any of the places you've represented?
Yeah, there's an issue about uniformity. When you have multiple sources, you might have, we'll just take an employee situation. If an employee happens to work for some other elected board, they should just be just as protected as an employee who works under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. There needs to be consistency
I think we're saying the same thing on that.
across lines. I agree with that, but I think it's too big a job to ask Diane to take on all of this. So it might make sense to have like a two-step thing, which like it first comes to our office, and then we look at whether or not it's a personnel issue that's going to involve council or not. And if it's not, then I don't want to use the word farm it out. I'm trying to think of the right word.
Well, so you have a triage for stuff that needs to go through town administrator and town council, but routine records requests should be able to go through either the town clerk or whatever board the records come from, right? That's not something that needs to be screened. If they're public records, they're public records. The problem is when you get an information request for something that's a public record that's not really a public record.
So you could,
Mike, I don't think being the public records access officer means she has to do the lion's share of the work.
no, but it is responsible for adhering to the dates and everything, and if you've assigned it to a department.
Right, she can then assign it.
Yeah, but if the department is lagging in that response, you know, you have to nag the department, and you do get pulled into
Right.
the middle of it, just like we have been for the past year.
That's why I think
But
you ought to
if you
have,
split it up too much, then there's no one in
But
charge.
you've got some pretty short windows in here, and you can envision a scenario
shorter.
where, you know, Diane's on vacation or something, and so, she, you know, maybe it sits there for a couple days, and then,
Diane doesn't go there.
and then it goes,
Yeah, that doesn't even happen.
and then it goes somewhere else, and all of a sudden, you don't have a whole lot of time to respond. And so, I think we've got to find a way to you know, to streamline the ones out very quickly that don't need any intervention on your part.
Actually, I attended the training at Cape Cod, where you see this came from. And they had made a recommendation that you have someone designated just as the records access officer, that was their sole job to do.
but in a town like ours with
I
this
don't-
many people, I don't see how you can be.
I don't mind, you know, if you, and I didn't think about this before, but if you did delegate that or appoint the town administrator as the record access officer, Diane as her appointment as assistant town administrator basically has the same authority if, you know, if for some reason I wasn't able to do it or wasn't here.
I think
We were looking for more work for you two to do.
How many requests do you get? David?
It's funny who you ask.
In the past month, there were 4 or 5 conflict of interest open meeting type issues. One took 3 weeks before we could settle it with town council, and we just worked out with the person that, this is gonna take some time to sort through. We don't wanna give you a record that you shouldn't have, and they were completely understanding about it.
And that's a typical number?
You mean like 5 a month?
Hmm?
I think that's probably a high month.
Are you talking about for the selectmen, or are you saying for the town as a whole?
The town as a whole.
Well, if you talk to some of these other boards, like the Board of Health will tell me they get them on a daily basis. You talk to the town clerk, and she gets them on a daily basis.
It's a lot of time. I think we have to have, before we can make any decisions, my view is you have to have a discussion with Carol, or somebody up here has to have a discussion with you and Carol, and kind of work out a protocol for who's going to take what, because the way I read this KP law update and the legislation is arguably the town clerk can declare herself the records person, and then you've got a question of, well, so who's in charge of a particular type of record? I think it's very poorly done, and there's no regulations, so how do we work that out internally so everybody knows what their assignment is and what to do when something comes in?
So maybe you end up more detailed that minutes and agenda requests go to the town clerk.
Or historical records, I mean, I don't know, but some of the stuff that's active personnel related, and we just saw, we went through executive session minutes a week ago, and there were some that we couldn't produce because they pertain to things that are protected by open meeting law and privilege and so forth, and most of them, nearly all of them, we did produce.
The point of having a records access officer is so that the public knows where to go, and that there would be 1 or 2, not a whole lot like Mark had pointed out.
Yeah.
Is to get away from the system where you go to the X department and you ask for records and they say, well, those aren't our records, sorry, we can't help you. You want to have somebody who will be responsible to make sure that it gets to the right department in the whole town. But we saw that you couldn't really have just one person do that because A, it's too much work, and many communities can't afford to go out and hire an employee to do nothing but do records. And B, some of the departments, like the police department, wanted, I don't know what the police department here in Sherborn, I've never had any input from them, but there were police departments around the state who wanted to do their own records. They had confidentiality issues, they had law enforcement issues, and they were used to a stream of people getting accident reports and so on, so they felt like they could handle it in public.
There must be a legal definition of what's a public record. And by the way, I don't necessarily mean 3 to 5 or whatever it is trivial. I can see where these could take up a lot of time. But there must be a definition of what is a public record.
Yeah, it's a statutory definition.
And I mean, can we use that as our guideline, that anything that meets that?
Well, that would be what you have
that
to
just
produce.
immediately goes to.
But the question is what meets it. So if there's a personnel record, town council may tell you this is something that's a personnel record that you might not think was a personnel record, or might seem innocuous to you.
Right. And
Even
then,
though it's not in the person's personnel record.
right, and then the person, can turn around and make a complaint to
Sure.
the state agency, and then you're communicating back and forth with them over that one thing, so that they can get time consuming, but.
I would think you've spent, just anecdotally, David, and listening to, seeing emails from you and listening to you, I would say you've spent multiple hundreds of hours in the past year as an office on records
Absolutely.
requests.
Absolutely.
That's a big chunk of our budget,
Absolutely.
effectively, for staff in our office. And it's not, I don't want to say it's wasted time, but it's definitely time that's not moving the town forward. It's responding to, in a lot of cases, it's responding to kind of idiosyncratic requests or individual requests,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that. But,
The
you know, we're not hearing a lot from, you know, press requests and the kinds of things that this act was intended to facilitate. That's not what we're dealing with.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I mean, the press has requested documents maybe 3 to 5 times over the past year, and they're usually very specific about the document. They don't ask for things that you need to compile or produce, and we do those things here where some towns in the past would turn somebody away and say, you're asking for a document that doesn't exist, I don't have to provide it. But we would usually try to do, if it's something we can pull together quickly, then we would do it, so.
Again, that's another judgment call.
Right.
Right.
Well, I kind of like the idea that was mentioned that the TA becomes the public records officer, but he would have at least 2 other records officers. The town clerk would be one, and maybe Diane would be the other. And if something comes in, then you look at it and you say, well, this one is going to involve labor council and employees and privacy rights and all of that. And you put that into one pile and you process it one way. And this over here is a request for minutes, and they're all on file with the town clerk's office. And that goes in a different pile. I kind of like that idea, so then the public knows to go to you, file it with the Board of Selectmen's office. We also have better hours for people to come in and look at things, more availability.
Doesn't mean you do the work. It means you become the clearinghouse. You're doing work, but
At
you're
that
not
point.
necessarily, you two aren't necessarily pulling the records together. If it involves health records, then you're doing what you've done, which is farming it out to
Right.
Board of Health for response.
It's just unfortunate sometimes those, the timing of those can come in that we'll have to pause it, whatever we're doing, and address that till it's assigned to somebody or that we're doing, or that we do it.
Well, 10
There's no way around
10
it.
business days gives you a little bit of flexibility, I guess.
But the statute, the records access officer is not the one who actually assembles the record.
That's what
The access officer's responsibility for self-policing,
Right.
to make sure that deadlines are met, make sure that the citizen or whoever's requesting the documents is treated properly, they're not ignored, they're not given a hard time. The whole point of it is to increase transparency and make things more user-friendly for the public. That's really the goal of this thing. That does not mean that the public records officer, access officer, is physically, in the attic or in the basement for weeks at a time and comes out for, bread and water and then goes back to an archaeological dig. That he or she is more of a manager, getting it done by the people who have the records.
But that sounds like what we do now.
Yeah, it does. I'm wondering if we should put this back on the agenda after you've had a chance to talk
Yeah,
to
yeah.
Carol and
Yeah.
to the chief.
I mean, we expected that it's something that we needed to start talking
Yeah.
about to get in place for January 1st, but look, just now, we've gone in a little different direction than we were thinking, and, I think it's a better direction for the town.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah, I'm more worried about the liability of giving up something that invades somebody's privacy or that we can be sued for than I am about it might take a little longer to
Right.
figure out
And
what to give
I
up.
think that's exactly why they found that, especially in our instance, just like somebody on the police side is best suited to weed through what should be redacted or what's personal info, because every police report has personal info, so they have to redact that. Our TA, especially at least here in our town, is probably best suited to quickly look at stuff and know, that's gotta go to legal counsel, that doesn't.
Right. Okay. And again, not to purpose of hiding the record, just to make sure we're only doing
Protect-
what
yeah,
we're supposed
exactly.
to do. Okay. So that's
Put
that.
on a future.
So, Six-Town Board of Selectmen meeting, David, this is you circulated an email on this. This is a request that somebody has pulled together about some municipal cooperation.
Yeah, I'm not sure which town, the date has changed a
Is
couple
it
of times.
December 8th still, or?
Yeah, it's still, no. December 8th, yeah. And it's just another initiative of some towns getting together for, to see if there are any regional or cooperation solutions. So it just, to me, it reminded me of the situation that we had with Medfield. And we ended up being the only participant at the end, with the final work product. The other thing that bothered me was, once Mark and I were there were a couple of towns that had committed that, nothing to do with staffing or personnel, that those things were off the table. So the things that we want all have to do with staffing and personnel. I mean, the only thing I can think of that we could jointly do with another town that there's some need is getting a cherry picker, or a street sweeper.
And we haven't had the best record. We own a couple pieces of equipment we haven't seen in decades with other towns.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You mean they just
Really?
disappeared?
They end up, one town has it, then another, we have a loan screener, which hasn't been back to town in, I bet, 10 years. And something else really expensive that we bought. This is going back when, I think when Gary was here. Not Gary, Jamie Bianca.
Oh, so you're talking 20 years.
Yeah, but the equipment made it 10 years, died somewhere, it sat in someone's garage. I don't
I
know.
see.
I think Weston might have had the loan screener, I don't know, the engine blew up.
Weston.
That's why the taxes are so low, they're stealing our loan screeners.
Well, anyway, I think we can, I would not recommend that we do this.
It can be
Based on my
time-consuming.
experience, I mean, there might be something in it, but it takes a lot of work. And again, if there isn't going to be an opportunity to really go where the money is, I
Right.
think we got better things to do.
Can you write a nice,
Oh, yeah,
thank,
sure.
thank you, but at this point, we're not able to participate in this or something.
Yeah, we do a lot of cooperation with Natick and Framingham, where there are a lot of resources that we can attach to for very little, money, instead of absorbing a greater percentage of the cost of some smaller towns. So,
One of the things, just going back to what we started with today with this complete streets, I mean, if we're going to do, Ed was talking about bicycle markings on Route 16 possibly. Well, if you're going to do stuff like bicycle markings, it makes sense to talk to the neighboring towns and find out where their bicycle markings are going to be, so you have contiguous routes. I mean, I'm not positive Route 16 is the best location. Where I see people riding bicycles on the weekends are the slightly less busy roads, Lake Street, Forest Street, Mill Street, Goulding, Woodland, but that's kind of up to Ed, but I think where you talk about coordinating with surrounding towns, it makes sense to coordinate those kinds of things.
yeah, I'll send them something.
Okay. The next thing is this town property disposition.
It was brought to my attention about a year ago from Kitty Sturgis that she had a number of benches and chairs that were taken out of the community center when the community center took it over.
No, they were right here.
Oh, in this building before it was renovated.
Yeah.
So they've been in Kitty's garage for a number of years. So she was cleaning out the garage and wanted to make sure that we went back and looked at what the original plans were to do, to not dispose of them, but to sell them and donate the funds. And there were lots of things that had been looked at in the past. The only thing that is legal in the procurement laws is disposing of the property through auction. So that's when we talked to an auction house and got, a proposal to auction the remaining items that we aren't, that we don't see as salvageable and usable in a town building.
So the only thing that's legal for disposing of property is an auction, an actual auction?
Well, equipment, no, we could hold our own auction type. But if you're,
You can't appraise it and have a sale and just say it's got to sell for at least this price, or? I'm looking at this with a 30% margin on it, and the idea that it's an auction house where these are, they have a little bit of historic interest maybe to the town. People might be willing to pay for them. I know they disposed of town meeting benches from the community center a few years ago, and a lot of people, acquired those and purchased them.
right.
Maybe there's a better way to do this where, the town gets the money, but there also is not a commission coming out of it.
But a lot of towns have bylaws that authorize the Board of Selectmen to dispose of property under $500, I think, Nantucket's bylaw. But under a certain amount, you can dispose of it.
If there's no value, yeah.
It's basically de minimis value. And while these chairs are of great sentimental value for those of us who sat in them for many years, I don't think they have any value at all. You may have to pay somebody to take them away.
Well, it's tough because we've had people say, I'd give $100 for one of those, and then you say, well, I have no way of giving you that because you just proved that it has value. It's more like if somebody came in and said, I'll take the junk for you because it has no value, but it has some sort of value to somebody.
I think what Paul's saying is it has nominal value. These aren't valuable antiques. These are.
No, but you need a bylaw that would authorize, otherwise you've got to follow this.
So tell Kitty, as soon as we have a bylaw adopted, we'll be able to get rid of her.
No,
They're
no,
not
sure.
at her place anymore.
We had them move from Kitty's property to the CM&D garage.
Oh, we did? I was going to suggest we do that.
Yeah, that's good.
They are-
So they're out of Kitty's property?
They're
Yeah.
out of Kitty's property.
So the urgency is,
Can we move them to the swap shop?
They're still.
It's closed.
Excuse me?
Can we move them to the swap shop?
I don't see how you do
Is that what
that.
you mean?
I think
they're safe where they are if they're at CM&D.
I mean, they made money at the community center on these benches. I don't know how much they cleared. You can ask, I think
Right.
Kitty or George or somebody was involved in that years ago, but they made some money. It went towards their treasury.
You can donate items to a nonprofit only that is
CSA.
for the purpose of delivering welfare services or that kind of thing. The law is pretty specific on what type of organization you can actually donate it to.
Mhm.
So
Assuming
Can we
it has-
donate them to the CSA so they can auction them off at their auction? The money would go right to the school. Or DSCF.
And I'm thinking,
We
this
give
is
them away?
my view is we should not go with an auctioneer, and we should figure out a better way to do this.
okay, so they're safely stored right now.
Okay.
So, if we happen to see another opportunity where we have a number of other things that need to be auctioned off, we can reconsider it.
Or if you consider them valueless, then you can dispose of them.
But like David's saying, you can't really consider them valueless if somebody's willing to
People
pay
are asking.
even a little bit of money for them, so.
What if we put one, because there's a handful of chairs and then a handful of benches. What if we had one of each here as a sample?
What does that do?
I mean, how
What?
much do we think all this
Have a
is?
sample, that's all.
You know?
A couple thousand bucks, right?
Well, because they've been in a,
So, but if we auction it off, we get $1,400. Let's say it's $2,000.
Yeah.
We auction it, we get $1,400.
Right.
We do it ourselves.
I'm thinking what they did at the community center was they had some kind of an open house. There was something else going on, and one of the things they did was they said, if you want a bench, let me know and pay X amount, and we'll, you can come pick it up on such and such a day.
Do it as,
Right.
you can do it as a sign.
That's what I'm getting at. And if they were here and people saw, hey, we have a bunch of these, we're trying to get
But
rid of
in
them.
other words, it took, Mark, I don't think it took a lot of brain damage or effort, and they raised the money. They didn't cut anybody in, and they didn't have to make a contract with
No,
an
but they
auctioneer.
can do that.
Okay.
They can,
Who
they
could do
can dispose of the benches and keep the money,
Who's that?
the community center.
But we can't, is that what you're saying?
We can keep, we can keep the money, but we can't just put a price tag on it in the hallway like they were doing, and people were buying them.
Let's give them to the community center and have them get rid of them.
You can't give it to the community center, because I said you cannot donate it to a nonprofit entity that's.
Can we do a special act so we can give them to the community?
It's a very
And
bizarre
leave them
thing.
here and see if they can get rid of them?
It's a very bizarre thing when, if you go with Paul's route and declared of no value to the town, because we will not use them. We've picked out the ones that we can actually put in an office or put in a hall
Yeah.
or something like that. If the remaining ones are of no value to the town, you could take that argument, but
At next meeting, can we have all the green chairs out and the benches back in?
They were
Could
very
I
comfortable
suggest that
benches.
we go forward with the auction for a couple of reasons? All these ideas are great, but none of them accomplish anything, and they're all long-term rather than short-term. And I know you don't want to spend money on an auctioneer,
I don't want to spend money on an auctioneer.
but getting $1,000 is better than getting nothing. And some of us have been dealing with these for 20 or 30 years. I mean, these benches have been around for a long time, and these Windsor chairs have been around for a long time, and they are very uncomfortable, in my opinion. They simply don't fit into the modern home. I mean, would you want one of these?
No, I'm not talking about people who want them in their home.
we can.
You could use it for firewood. I mean,
We can try to promote the auction more heavily to drive the price up so that there's those people who have expressed interest in having bid higher on it.
they have sentimental value. You know, the little hearts. You know,
They have a town seal on them?
Carved in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John loves Susan, whatever. Little things
I didn't
carved
see
in there, and so people want to buy it for sentimental value. But
You were carving in the chairs, Paul? I don't even understand.
Well, remember, this was a school,
Oh.
They were here when it was
these were
center
School
school.
chairs? Okay.
and my brother's name's probably all over those things.
Here, so you
I'll
want-
buy him one.
How much you want that, for that one?
I'd pay $50 just to stick in his
I
office.
can say there's documentation of the selectmen or the town administrator trying to do something with them going back 10 years on a couple of different occasions.
yeah, we try.
And they've decided to put it away and not do it.
We try to get rid of them, but there's sentimental value. A lot of people have sentimental value, but they have no sentimental value in somebody's garage, and they have no sentimental value at CM&D. So people who have sentimental value, they should be able to come and. I mean, we thought we were going to have to pay to have the stuff taken away, and people were saying, "Oh no, that people will pay for it."
So we
Why don't we
could-
just leave CM&D unlocked and see who's really got some? I'll move that we go ahead with the auction.
Second.
Wait,
We
So
can,
we have a motion on the table, we got a second. David?
We could still, I could have Ed pull each one out, take a photo of it, and you could do an online auction that would qualify. Just a thought, rather than you get 100% of whatever.
And then would any department
Advertise on next
qualify
door.
for the proceeds?
Excuse me?
So would any department qualify for the proceeds, or
I'd go directly to general.
we can just keep it?
Yeah, let's do
Okay.
that.
Want to try that?
Sure.
Ed likes to do those.
Ed likes to do those things? Does he do auctions?
I love that. The auction, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
Vehicles.
Ed do it?
I'd rather have Ed do it then.
Okay.
So, Mark, would you amend your motion to authorize this?
Absolutely.
I'll second your amended motion.
All in favor of the
Ed
the
Wagner
auction?
Ed Wagner Auction House.
Make sure it gets on next door.
I've been
That'll
involved
hit 1,000 homes tomorrow.
in these auctions before with police jackets, and they were thick leather jackets, and there were about 60 of them. And one guy came in at the auction and bought them for like $50, and then sold them on eBay for like $150 a piece.
That's what's gonna happen to these chairs, I'm telling you.
What you're getting for Christmas.
That's what your Christmas present. Yeah.
All right, so do we have any selectmen reports or anything else?
Selectmen reports, I want to wish everybody the best Thanksgiving. Everybody in the community, and everybody on the board, and to our large audience. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, great. Anybody else? Second Paul's happy Thanksgiving? Great, okay.
The school committee negotiating team continues to meet.
Okay.
Once or twice a week, and we've started meeting with the teachers. Can't report any progress at this point. Not that there isn't progress, but I just can't tell you about it. But just so you know that we're working on that. And Dave and I are still pushing forward on the software system.
Financial.
We're not looking at a January switchover. Did I already talk to you about that? Okay.
Thanks for doing this.
It's going to be too difficult. And the reason is we decided that there were a lot of changes to the chart of accounts that we wanted to make. So a mid-year transition is going to be difficult to reconcile at the year end. So for that reason, we'd rather do more work on the chart of accounts and make the switch July 1 on everything.
So at some point,
So apparently we're not working as much as we thought we were.
okay. All right, Sean, anything? I know we got a 40B application in this week for, what's it called? The name of it?
Coolidge Crossing.
Coolidge Crossing, is that one?
For ZBA?
Well, the application came in, I believe.
Yeah.
I think we all received that in the package. So has the ZBA scheduled a meeting yet for that?
I don't have the date.
The 6th. Isn't that the 6th?
I don't know.
My thought on that was that we should activate Beals and Thompson and get another 15,000 to cover their expenses.
Mhm.
Have them as a resource.
It's a great idea. That was the plan, right? That's good. Good thought. Okay, anything else, or do we have a motion to adjourn?
No, we have to do minutes.
We have to do minutes? What minutes do we have to
Not
do?
minutes, we have to
Meeting
do meeting
dates.
dates.
Oh, I thought we had these all set. 11:30 we definitely have set. 12:15, did we talk about that last week? I think we did.
11:30 is set, right?
Yeah.
12:15 is a Thursday night, and it conflicts with another meeting, so
It conflicts with what meeting?
the
It
Dover
conflicts with
meeting,
Rick
so
not being able to, we
Oh,
don't
okay.
have anybody to do our meeting then.
So did we scratch the 8th? Which I'm happy about. If
Yeah, I
we
think
did.
we're scratching the 8th.
Right.
Wonderful.
So it's 11:30 and then,
so if you did the 13th or 14th, it would be good, but if we have to do the 15th, that's fine.
I thought Rick had that working so well he could just set it to auto
I can't
record.
do the 14th.
what about the 13th?
I'm trying to figure out what dates I can do.
So we have one on for the 30th.
Definite for the 30th.
Okay, and the next one you're talking about is the 15th?
No, the 13th?
13th?
Talking about the 13th?
Or-
I can't do the 13th.
December
if you-
3rd.
what
I
if-
cannot do the 13th. That's a Tuesday. I can't do that.
Would you want to go all the way to the 22nd, or is that too?
That's too
We have the 21st.
Yeah.
Why do I have these all in here, but you don't have them?
No, we don't have anything for the 21st.
Let's-
I had the 8th and the 21st.
We scheduled the 21st.
And the 21st.
7 o'clock on the 21st.
And the 8th.
And we scheduled the 8th, but it looks like now people don't want to do the 8th.
What about the 14th then? That's the
Yeah,
Mark
Wednesday.
I
couldn't
can't
do
do
it.
the 14th, we got a meeting with the teachers.
So if somebody can't do, what about Monday the 12th?
People hate when we jump around like that.
It works
Although
for-
they're not
works for
here
me.
tonight.
I think we just do the 15th, and if we can't get somebody from the cable company to come and sit in for...
It won't be
Rick-
televised.
Well, it won't be televised. I mean, that's not our problem. We
I
have,
thought we were going GoPro.
there's only one person in the entire world who knows how to work that equipment. I mean, and Rick does a great job, but it's too bad they can't figure out, with our esteemed cable committee, how to get somebody else who can work that equipment.
Okay, so the 15th, and then what about January?
I don't know, you had a proposal in here for January 5th. We can meet the 5th. It's already in my calendar.
It's already in my calendar.
5th or the 12th?
I can't meet the 12th of January.
Okay.
I had something else that night. So we can do the 5th. I think the 5th is 2 weeks after the 5th. It's actually 3 weeks after the 15th. We should be meeting the 5th.
Yeah, we'd be working on budgets and whatever.
And warrants.
Yeah.
I'm not caught up with you.
Okay, Sean?
Did we leave the 21st?
There's no 20.
No, the 15th of December. I'm sorry, you're right, the 21st of December.
That stayed,
That's stayed.
which we had and they didn't.
So it's December 15th and December 21st?
Yeah, if we need the 21st, we'll do the 21st. Okay? So it's the 15th. If we need the 21st, we'll do the 21st, and then January 5th. And that's
Okay.
enough for now.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody want to,
Move to adjourn?
We don't have to do these minutes?
No, there are no minutes.
Okay. Second.
no, for the next meeting, David, we're going to have minutes. Okay, so it's been moved and
Fifth was-
seconded
the
to
fifth.
adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great.